All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to sunny Stony Plain. If you haven't been outside, please don't. It is extremely hot, but if you do go outside, please make sure you hydrate and seek shade every so often. Members of Council, there's the agenda before you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Town Council adopt the July 8th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Okay. Thank you. Administration, anything to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing to add at this point.
Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, moving on for the agenda. Number 3 is public input session. This is the time that we allow residents and stakeholders to talk to council on anything that's not on the current agenda. Administration, has anybody registered to speak?
Through Your Worship, no one has registered this evening.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody in the gallery like to speak to council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, which is presentations and delegations. We have nothing scheduled tonight, so moving on to number 5 of our agenda is a statutory public hearing. And this public hearing is to deal with bylaw 2694/DMP/24, and it's the Municipal Development Plan Update, the 2024 version. So this is held, so it's in compliance with section 216.4 of the Municipal Government Act. And that council's holding this hearing so that allows members of our community to have the opportunity to speak and address any things that, that the council is looking at changing through that bylaw. And this is the only time that residents get to speak to council about this. I will call the meeting to order. The applicant, which is the Town of Stony Plain, gets to make a presentation. The Town of Stony Plain Council gets to ask questions of clear understanding. Then all those that are in favor of the proposed bylaw gets to make a comment or address council. And then again, council gets to ask questions for clear understanding. Then all those that are opposed gets to make comments and ask questions to council. And then again, council gets to ask questions for clear understanding. After that, then anybody that has a general comment on the proposed bylaw changes gets to speak next. Then after that, the council also gets the chance to ask for questions of clear understanding. After that, then the applicant gets to make some closing comments if they would like. If not, then that ends the public hearing. And then the business items will be dealt with a little later on regarding the bylaw changes. Administration, go ahead with the presentation. So I call the hearing to order.
Hello, thank you, Council. I'm here this evening to present the 2024 Municipal Development Plan update and any of the changes that have been made based on the comments from the first reading of this bylaw. So the Municipal Development Plan, this is the town's framework for future growth. It sets the overall vision and goals for the municipal development in town and establishes a roadmap for land management over the next 30 years. So within the town's land use planning framework, the MDP falls within the municipal planning scale. And at this scale, the MDP provides broad guidance and direction to provide guidance and direction on planning and development within the town. So the purpose of this update to the MDP was to align with the adoption of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board's Regional Agricultural Master Plan, or the RAMP. And in this plan, we are required to update our MDP to incorporate any policy direction and guidance on agriculture in the region, and as well to align with the RAMP, and we must do this by the end of 2024. So while our MDP already included many like a lot of policies and guidance on agriculture, we needed to make some minor updates in order to ensure it incorporates all of the agricultural policy direction from this RAMP policy that was adopted by the EMRB. So overall, these updates were administrative in nature. We included some RAMP agriculture policies and directions into our MDP that weren't there originally. We updated the population numbers and some document references, and we added an agricultural policy area to one of the maps in the MDP to align with the RAMP. So as part of this public hearing, administration has advertised on the public hearing. It was advertised in the Stony Plain Reporter, and also on the town's website to align with the town's public advertising bylaw. So in addition to the changes made originally, in order to update the MDP further, we heard the comments that were made at the first reading of this bylaw, and it has now been further updated to include corrections to some grammatical errors within the document, and administration also went back and reworded some select policies to increase the clarity of the policies and to make it easier for readers to understand what these policies were saying and what the intent of the policies were. So all of these additional changes that were made since first reading can be seen in the attached document, and they are highlighted in blue. So the next steps, we are at the public hearing and the second reading tonight. And with council's authorization, administration will proceed with preparing and submitting an application to the EMRB for their review and approval. And then once we have that approval from the ERB through the REF process, we will schedule a third reading and look for council's decision on adoption of the MDP bylaw in the fall. Thank you. That's all I have, and we are open to questions.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, and definitely council did provide some comment during first reading, and I'm glad to see those are captured and highlighted in blue on the revised copy. Members of council, any questions for clarity understanding on the presentation? Councillor Hansard, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to totally be open to you telling me that comes later, but I just want to get a couple of comments, a couple of questions answered before we go forward. The last time this uniquely Stony Plain Municipal Development Plan, which, by the way, I love, the whole title, the whole concept behind it, when it was brand new, it belonged to that council. It came back, if I'm not mistaken, in the term before this council term, and it was updated, am I correct, in 2020?
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard, that is correct, 2020.
So that council was elected 2017, and they had an update. And I see that that update included pictures of that council, because it was their update on the Uniquely Ours Municipal Development Plan. It no longer had the pictures from the council that actually adopted it earlier. I'm just wondering if the plan is able to be updated to have this council's stamp put on it. Because if it isn't, then the next time this comes up for review will be maybe what, 4 or 5 years from now? The stamp will be the council that was in place prior to this council, and I'm just referencing a few pages where the council pictures are all of the previous council. Love them all, they did a fabulous job, but it's their municipal development plan. Now this council with these people, it's our municipal development plan updated. Not a whole lot of changes, but it should still reflect this council. Is there any way that that might be able to be done? And I have marked the pages in particular, but I don't need to go over that here.
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard, the pages or the pictures in it can be updated. That is definitely within administration's ability. This can be done. I don't think it would be a substantive change. Say, for example, if we do go and get permission tonight for going to the REF. So yes, we could make that update. I don't know if we'd like some clear direction from council. Like an official motion or something to that effect, but it is something that administration could do if desired by council.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor Hansard. I believe this is just, as the changes are not like in depth anyway, it is minor changes to add the ramp, which we're required to. So I think that one, because this is still a regional municipal development plan that was approved in 2013. We're getting ready to redo the whole thing in another couple of years, but So on page 125, no, yes, 125, there is a there is a picture of council on there. I think that's really easy to switch out, and that will signify that it is 2021 council.
Yes, may I respond, Ms.?
Yeah, and I think the other pictures can be left.
No.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, it wasn't my plan to hit this right here, but I'll be glad to give you examples. Wherever council is referred to, we are held accountable before our residents for this municipal development plan. And it won't be updated in a couple of years. It will be 4 or 5 years, which means 2020 was the last time. That means we're looking at perhaps 2029, 2028, 2029. That's too long. Will it still carry the council from last term? I just think that's not appropriate. If we go to page 47, 48, it's a council picture that needs to be updated. If we go to page 85, there should be a new picture there. Our vision is an old council picture. If this municipal development plan is speaking of this council's update, it should be this council. An Arbor Day picture, maybe not, needs changing, but I've got all the page numbers written down, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, because it's this council's urban development plan update. I'm not asking for massive changes throughout the document, but somebody's accountable, somebody's responsible for voting this into existence. It is these 7 people.
Council Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just, in consideration of that, I think, again, this is the municipal development plan for the town of Stony Plain. I don't think it is owned by any particular council. It's adopted by the council when the plan is developed. It's adopted by the council the day when there are any updates to it. If anything, I would recommend for administration's ease in the future to eliminate any pictures of any given elected council within the document. Again, this is a reflection of our community. There's significant community engagement that goes in it, so it's not necessarily just council. And if the issue is that we feel that the council of the day needs to be in the MDP, then maybe we just make sure that there's no pictures of the elected council in it at all, and we just have pictures of our community. And therefore, that's, this is a plan that, this is not a short-term plan. I believe, if I'm correct in the planning slide, I think the MDP is a 20-year plan, typically.
Through your worship to Councillor Laurie, anywhere from 25 to 30 years, typical of a MDP.
Yeah, thank you. So that 25 to 30-year plan is going to live through a significant number of iterations of an elected body, since we could potentially all be changed out every 4 years. And so if we find that that's an issue, I think the better course forward maybe would just be to eliminate any pictures of the elected council at that time.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Maybe we can have that conversation a little bit further. I do believe that there are a lot of pictures of our community, and there's also pictures of our staff that are no longer part of our staff. So I don't want to go through this whole document and remove pictures that of staff that are no longer there. Again, the only changes that are proposed by administration start on page 85 of our minor. Okay. All those that were brought forward in the first reading is highlighted in red. All those changes that were changed from council commentary on first reading are in blue. Yeah. I do understand that there is actually one specific picture of council, of full council, which is on page 106. If members of council can turn to that page. It's 106. No, 125, I'm sorry. I had the wrong number there. It is, what? It's 124? I had it written down here as 125. Yes, so on page 124, thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Pleshko. So that is the only picture of council as a entity as itself. So I am okay with that picture being changed out, but the rest were done in terms of what we did as part of a community and community events. Councillor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, to administration. I'm just wondering, as I read through it, my thought come to mind is this a document that we reprint to hand out to people? Is this an ongoing document that we have printed anywhere that hits the public eye from time to time?
Through your worship to Councillor Pletchko, we do have some paper copies available if asked at the front counter, but again, generally it's downloaded off the website in a digital format.
Thank you for that. So I'm just wondering, as I look through it, I went and looked at some other communities that do the same thing, and quite often they change their pictures. And when I look through this document, I'm not referring to council pictures, I'm just referring to all the pictures that are in there. You know, when you look at some of the development within our region, there's a picture in there that is a development that went very badly in our community, which makes me wonder, you know, why do we not have something of a development that it's in our community that we're proud of? So as I look through this, the only thought that come to mind, and if it's a document that's easy to change, that's digital, that can be changed fairly easy, maybe from time to time when we're redoing this, it's a time for us to refocus on the development that we have in our community that we're proud of, that we want to promote, that shows what we do within our community. So I think, you know, we're having a discussion about pictures, whether we like them or not. Really, it's a reflection. When you look through this, what I reflected on was bad development within our community. And I think we have a lot of new development within our community that we're very proud of. Might be just an easy change at the time, especially if it's digital. I'm sure they can just take a picture and put a new picture in.
If I may, through your worship to Councillor Pletchko, the next update is hopefully within the next year or two. It's kind of what we're trying to aim for right now. You'll see more in the corporate plan in terms of how that goes forward. But ultimately, part of the scope of this was to keep it quite contained. So pictures, again, were one of the areas where we were not intending to do any updates because we were trying to keep it such a limited scope that it was really just the things that absolutely needed to be to make sure that we met the regional context statement through the for the ramp under the MRB. So again, things that can be discussed probably during the bylaw session in more detail in terms of any specific direction. But from a high level, picture changes were actually intentionally not a change, just so that we didn't necessarily, I'll say, open the door for some of these conversations in more, given the scope was just limited to the agricultural policy changes and the one map change.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that answer. It helps.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that that line of questioning, Councillor Pletchko. So again, looking at the adjustments, so everything that's in red and in blue is the proposed changes. If we can stick our conversations and questions about those changes. I have a question in terms of page 112, please. Under 1.5.d, definitely appreciate that being added to the MDP, as I think one of the biggest assets we have is the advocacy part of the education part and making sure that our residents understand what we're trying to do, and having that there, just that focus that we want to be more of an education process, so it understands why we're making these changes. I think it helps. It's not, I think the less information that we have out there and understanding why we're doing that, people tend to just talk and make stories up. So I definitely appreciate that, having that pointed out there. Councillor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So I'm going to refer to page 136 of 202, 6.1.h. Help me to understand the stripping of the land. The reason I'm asking that is quite often we see development within our community where they come in and strip the land and it sits vacant for a number of years where excess of weeds grow and stuff like that. So we're encouraging them to strip the land. Is there a way to add in there that maybe we encourage them to develop it at the same time?
Through your worship to Councillor Plechko, I think the key parts of this are to occur close to the time of construction. Again, we don't necessarily want our land to be regraded or removed from, say, our agricultural farm base. The intention here is that we do encourage the land to be stripped and used effectively, but we don't want it to be done, years or decades potentially before the land is actually going to be turned into, urban residential communities.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Councilor Lori, follow-up?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, on the same line, I'm just wondering, Councillor Palechko brings to light a good point. Close to can be subjective. For a developer, close to could be 3 years. They could feel that that's close to. I'm wondering, is there a way to strengthen that? Is there other words? Could we say as close to the time of development or as possible? I'm just curious because it is a good point. The intention behind this, I think you articulated well, is that our intention behind it is that they don't disturb that soil, that they don't strip that land until they're ready to build. But the words that are in there, I think, do have some subjectivity to them.
Okay. Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Lori, again, we are still, the bylaw has not been finalized, so we do have the opportunity to change that. The aspect I guess I would bring up is close to is somewhat flexible, somewhat little bit dependent. Again, a lot of these things do depend on the context. So again, if we've got an area structure plan going forward, maybe that's premature, maybe it's something we're waiting for the rezoning to trigger. I think this might also depend on the circumstances. This is an area where the farmer is no longer farming it, it's gonna be a weeded area. So I think allowing it intentionally at a policy level that's as high as the MDP, just to have that ability of flexibility to be applied appropriately is of merit. But again, it is something that if there's a motion made later tonight by council, it is something that we do have the ability to change.
Thank you. And the other aspect of this, and again, you brought it up about that stripping of those areas, maybe if they're not being farmed, is that as soon as those lands are exposed, you deal with erosion. You deal with soil erosion through wind, you deal with soil erosion through water. And so if an entire, let's call it an entire quarter section of a new development is being stripped, but the developer is only developing a small portion to start, that could actually be very detrimental to the land. And so potentially, again, and yeah, maybe there needs to be a motion considered on this one because there's nothing in here that states that. There's nothing in here that states that, the developer should encourage, or the town should encourage the developer to only strip the necessary lands for development. This is kind of saying that, hey, you know what? Yeah, if they've got an ASP, strip the quarter section as soon as you're going to start. But if it's going to take 10 years to build that section out, we've got a significant time of disturbed soils that aren't protected.
Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Lori, just to add to the manager of planning's comments. So, as the manager of planning noted, the language here is, it has some flexibility to it. It allows us to, at the NDP level, get that clear direction and comments from council so that we can work that into the agreements, into the permits that we work with them through. The next level down is the land use bylaw, where we have some provisions and some among stripping that we recently added in the last update. And the scale to which when you could talk about a whole quarter section stripping or a specific site stripping, there is circumstances and other things that we don't get into at the MDP level, but we certainly discuss in concert with the MDP direction that we get at these discussions and work them through into something tangible and workable with the developers that reflects what council expects to see. So you're never losing that connection between the permits and the work on the ground to the MDP. This allows a very clear, broad, flexible language for us to point to when we're having these discussions about why we may or may not want to entertain certain proposals from developers as we talk with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hanson, do you have something else on this topic?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Under the same point, 6.1.h, I really would like to not have that first phrase in there, and I think we're emphasizing the wrong thing. When we say the town will encourage the stripping of land, just does not ring true, does not ring as a good thing for us to be saying. I think what we are encouraging is developers to retain the land as in its natural state until such time as development is imminent. Because if we just say we want to encourage the stripping of land, there's a lot of people out there happy to do that. But I don't think that that's what we ought to do. We have to keep in mind, today's developer of a particular parcel of land is not tomorrow's actual developer who will develop that land. And so sometimes in the interest of moving things ahead, developers will want to move to get rid of the soil, get rid of the trees, any kind of growth that would protect the soils. And that land sits there. And as Councilor Laurie mentioned, it just erodes. So when we're going to encourage something, it ought to be something positive, or we're going to discourage. So the other way that could be changed is the town will discourage the stripping of land until a particular developer is, until particular development is imminent. Because then we don't have to go into all of that additional explanation. I know that please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that developers are allowed to do some earth moving. That's how we ended up with Lakeview stripped out. That's how we ended up with Somerville stripped out. I could name a bunch. But the issue is, if we are discouraging stripping of land, that's a whole different context for developers. And they should not just be encouraged to strip land. And that, a lot of them, that's what they're going to see, is that very first line. So if we could reword that, it would sit a whole lot better. And I think it will certainly sit a lot better with our public and those people who are highly concerned about the environment. Planning and development has a good lock on what they're trying to do. The wording, I believe, is not good.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Hansard. So that was similar to the points that Deputy Mayor and Councilor Plechko. Administration, anything with this wordsmithing, or is it, because it does say the town will encourage stripping of land to develop new areas to occur close to the time.
Not good enough.
Your Worship, if I may, maybe a polite reminder, we're still in a public hearing, and some of this discussion is probably best placed during the business item or the bylaw reading.
Okay, thank you. And maybe then I can just put that off until later, because I think council's trying to wordsmith something that maybe is not required. I'll continue to ask on that same point, 6.1H, in terms of encouraging to not strip land until close to the time. But however, on a land use bylaw, we do have all the zones that allow earth moving. So then is administration going to use that leeway to approve earth-moving permits closer to the time? Or are we just, if somebody comes and asks for an earth-moving permit, they do receive it because it is permitted in all those zones?
Through your worship, to all of council, the intention of the earthworks use under the land use bylaw as permitted in all districts is to enable it so that it can be done without necessarily being appealed as a right. But however, there is a section of regulations that kind of confines or provides some requirements or a framework in terms of what we require. Again, there's different ways of phrasing or structuring different uses in terms of how you do this. Secondary suites, for example, are now permitted in all categories, but there's requirements that are the way that that's sort of regulated. This is how we approached the earthworks, again, that it's permitted, but that there are regulations that it needs to meet. So it enables us to still put restrictions or conditions on what that's going to be or where it can be according to meeting those conditions, but that it is not necessarily appealable by default as any discretionary use would have.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for clear understanding? Councillor Hansard, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is this on? It's red. It's got to be red. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm looking at 6.8D in particular, and I realize that's not got read through it, but I think it's giving further explanation to 6.8B, and maybe it is B that I'm pointing to. Where do we take into consideration the desire of a particular landowner, property owner, who happens to own an agricultural piece of land that right now sits within the boundaries of Stony Plain, maybe because it's been annexed or whatever, but where do we give freedom to that property owner to change what they want to do with the land? If we designate a farm on the outside perimeter of Stony Plain as this farmland urban development, for urban development, in a way, we're kind of saying two different things. We're telling them they need to leave it as farmland. You need to stay in farming, or you got to find some other way to have that land used, because we're not going to allow it to be developed except in a certain way. When a particular landowner might want to take advantage of the ability to have a developer take it and create housing or anything else on it. I think we have to always remember we have a right to set parameters to an extent, but we have to respect the property owner. And to tell a particular owner, you may not develop your land. It must stay farm, and for particularly livestock operations, access for agricultural uses, maybe they don't have a succession plan in place. Maybe nobody in their family or no sales attempts to sell their farmland have been successful. Are we tying them to that use of the land so that they cannot benefit from it becoming something different? And I'm just wondering if we've taken that into consideration.
Yeah. I think that's a good question, Councillor Hanser. I think we asked something about that before, and the answer is no. We're not tying the hands of the current owners to not do anything else but farming. As zoned in future development, as a residential owner of the property, they can come in and apply for land use, and then that'll be run through the whole process, and then council gets the final decision similar that we're having right now.
So you're suggesting, Mr. Mayor, that at that time, the given moment in time, that a family who's maybe farmed for 3 or 4 generations decides they no longer can sustain farming operations, they can hope to come into the town and be able to do something different from that land and profit from it. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. That's very similar to a few years back, if Councillor Hansard would recall, Council approved Home Acres area structure plan, but it's still, right now, still zoned future development because the owners of the land have not come forward yet to subdivision and done. So they're still farming it currently, and it's area structure plan for residential development and growth, but nothing has happened. So that's the landowner has the ability to do that. And also, if Council recalls, way back in 2012, 2013, there was a quarter section of land north of 16A on Range Road 11, which was actually zoned residential. Council actually, when we went through the whole land use planning, we changed that back to future development because we did not want development there because it was too far away from the center of the town. The amount of cost to service that, to bring sewer up there and water, was not very well use of town tax dollars. So we made that change. So as you mentioned, anybody that owns property in town has the ability to make a request to town to do something, but council has the final decision if we want to change it or not, which has not changed. I'm not too sure if I'm getting that point across or not.
Oh, you've gotten it across,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, but I think that was to, the red line and blue line was added just to make sure that we wanted to make sure that people that already had those existing operations knew that we weren't going to force them to be urban.
And with respect to you, Mr. Mayor, would that be similar answer that administration, our general manager of planning might have given on that question?
Through your worship, to Councillor Hansard, basically there's an interplay between policy and regulation. The land use bylaw sets the regulation that allows the users currently to do what they're able to do, whereas the policy is there to affect change so that if you were to change that regulation and do something like a redistricting, it would guide that. So again, the policies of the MDP are those higher level order kind of guiding principles to better make an informed decision in terms of where we're going.
Okay. And to help the landowner understand town direction, planning, vision, policy, correct?
Through your worship, Councillor Planner, that is correct. Again, the intent there is that if a change is to be made, what would be acceptable? That's really what the policy is guiding us for.
Very good. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have landowners who were going to be trapped forever in a farming situation when they don't want to be any longer.
No, and I think the biggest thing about when the MRB went and improved the Regional Agriculture Master Plan was not to landlock it or trap it or sterilize that land so it's single use. The idea was to make sure that we are cognizant of how we develop, and we make sure that we develop in the most efficient manner possible before we eat up farmland. Any other questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. I have a question in terms of page 137. Okay, I think this is an addition of 6.1.x. So I like this like dot in there because I think council has talked a lot about urban agriculture and how we're going to be able to do that. So we see things that the town is doing in terms of the micro gardens that we're doing. I think we talked things about like balcony gardening so people can put gardens on their balconies. How would this policy, this little point, allow the town to encourage this kind of development and encourage residents to look at more urban agriculture within their piece of property?
Through your worship to all of council, policy 61X is intended to ensure that at a neighborhood level, when new plans are being developed, that they explicitly require that policies and directions to enable, again, the urban agriculture continue. So again, this is kind of a reflection, kind of a cyclic sort of thing by which now that we have our own urban agricultural plan, the regional ramp is in effect right now. So this kind of puts the highest level order municipal policy in place that would require that. So that when we get down to the neighborhood level, we would have a policy that would align with that in every new area structure plan that goes forward.
And so then my follow-up question was, I think Councillor Anderson mentioned this quite a few times through our conversations around this council table is the developers kind of leaving odd shapes or pieces of property that is given back to the town as a park or a green space because they can't develop on it, but we can't program it because it doesn't quite fit for anything that we do. So is this an area that we can say, you know what, instead of leaving this, half pie-shaped lot into as a green space for the town, could I be kind of utilized as a community gardens for the community and say, you know what, as the developer, instead of leaving this and planting a few trees, why don't you put community beds up there?
Through your worship to all of council, I believe this policy here could maybe indirectly lead to that. That would be more specific for like a park space designation policy, which falls more under the parks and open spaces. So we do have some other policies likely in the MDP that get at that. This one here would be more indirect, given that, again, if you're just looking at urban agriculture for those, say, park spaces, this would help that. But there's other ones that might be more specific in terms of limiting park spaces to usable, programmable spaces as opposed to parts that are difficult to program.
Okay, thank you. All right, members, council, any other questions for clear understanding? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next phase of the public hearing. So this is the time that we allow anybody that's in favor of the proposed changes. Again, the changes are highlighted in red, and then also the changes that were made after first reading are highlighted in blue. Administration, has anybody signed up to speak in favor?
Through your worship, no.
Okay. Is anybody in the gallery like to speak in favor of the proposed bylaw changes? Okay. Seeing there's nobody that's stepping forward, so we'll move on to the next phase, which is anybody that is opposed to the proposed bylaw changes. Administration, has anybody registered to speak?
Through your worship, no one has.
Okay. If anybody in the chambers like to speak against the proposed bylaw changes? Seeing that nobody is here, I'll move into the next phase of the public hearing. So all those that have a general comment regarding the proposed bylaw changes. Administration, has anybody registered?
Through your worship, no one has.
Does anybody in council chambers like to speak a general comment about the proposed bylaw changes? Okay. Seeing nobody standing up, administration, any closing remarks to the application?
No, your worship.
Okay. Thank you. So, members of council, we've gone through the public hearing. Just to verify with administration, did we follow the process enough in terms of the Municipal Government Act to satisfy section 216.4?
Through your worship, yes, we have.
Okay. So with that, then we'll declare the public hearing for proposed bylaw 2694/DMP/24 Municipal Development Plan 2024 update closed, and this will be dealt later on in business item. Okay, moving that with our agenda is number 6, which is the regular council meeting minutes from June 24th. Councilor Pletchko, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council approved the June 24th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, thank you. Council, you had the opportunity to read them. Any errors, omissions, or questions regarding those minutes? Okay, I do not see any either, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to number 7 is council boards and committee minutes. 7.1 is the Meridian Housing Foundation for April 25th. Councilor Hansard.
Your worship, I move that town council receive the council board and committee minutes for information.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, you had the opportunity to read them. Any questions or comments regarding those minutes, or questions to the council employee, appointee, or administration? Councilor Lowry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I see that you attended here and are listed as an ex officio. Just wondering, do we have a named alternate for the Meridian Foundation?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There is no named alternates, as the board has gone away from alternates as part of their conversations with the municipal government officials. So I attended as ex officio, so I can listen. I may be even just able to speak once in a while, but I cannot vote on any of the items that came forward.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Marr, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I guess to you, I'm just curious about item 7.2 regarding the maintenance garage. I'm just curious, does Meridian Housing Foundation have a fleet, and how big it is?
The Meridian Foundation, from my understanding, they do not have a fleet. They do have a couple of vehicles that they do go and maintain the properties in Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, and Waldman. So they do have a couple of vehicles, but they do not have a fleet.
So then I would imagine that the garage in question, it just seems like a pretty big variation between 80 and 190. I was just curious if there was a specific need for a large garage or something.
Actually, it was for the same size of garage. It was just different contractors with pricing.
Such variance.
Yes, there was a huge variance from that. But I believe that they'll go through the whole the town process of applying for a development permit, and then goes through all the processes, and then our staff will make sure everything's compliant within the zoning and the setbacks from the laneway and the neighbors on the east or west of the property. Okay. Councilor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a little bit further to that question, I've had a few calls regarding, just wondering if you can clarify the need for this and where that funding is actually coming from, and what is the cost to our taxpayer?
Okay, so definitely there was a need from what I heard from the conversation. They just needed places to store the vehicles, and also then they have a lot of equipment and stuff for grass mowing stuff. So right now, it's kind of stored at the existing Meridian Foundation site, which is no longer large enough to maintain it. The money that is coming from, if you read the motion, is actually from a reserve transfer that there was surplus, so that's coming from there. So the money has already been collected. So it's not increasing the requisition for 2024 at all.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I just have maybe a question for administration. In terms of receiving these minutes from council boards and committees, are they given to us as drafts, or are they given to us after they've been adopted by the committee or foundation?
Through your worship, at this time, it's after they've been adopted.
Okay, so if it's after it's been adopted, then I'll have to talk to Councillor Loynes, but because I just noticed I was reading the minutes, and there's two section 8s. 8 is the new business, and 8 is also closed session. So I will send an email to Councillor Loynes as the council representative to maybe kind of highlight that and have those minutes corrected. Any other questions for clear understanding? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on, number 8 of our agenda is for bylaws. So this is the bylaw 2694/DNP/24, and this is to do second reading, and those are the items that were highlighted in red or in blue on our agenda packages. Administration, anything else to add before we accept the motion?
Through your worship, to all of council, just to add on that, again, anything that was changed from first reading till now is also in blue in the agenda.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you. Councillor Meyer, for the motion, please.
Yes, thank you. That Town Council gives second reading to bylaw 2694/DNP/24 as amended, a bylaw to adapt the uniquely Stony Plain Municipal Development Plan 2024, and 2, authorize administration to proceed with preparing and submitting a regional evaluation framework review to the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Board.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Meyer. I'll open the floor for members of council for questions, comments, and debates on the motion. Councillor Hansard, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I asked some questions earlier about picture alteration. My suggestions to have pictures altered primarily were from, although I mentioned 2 pages as an example of old council pictures, those were prior to the new changes for this development plan, municipal development plan. Understanding that everything new that was purported to be adopted by this council would come after page 85, I still would not, I don't feel that I want to back down on having some pictures changed. I don't think we have to change previous employees or residents who no longer live in Stony Plain. I do like the idea that Councillor Plechko brought forward about getting rid of the one development that's a thorn in everyone's side on the one page, and I believe that was page 120, well, 6.1X, I believe. I certainly believe that could be changed out to something else. But I don't feel that it's wrong to ask for this council's pictures, and I'm not in favor of having all council pictures removed. We also are part of this town. We happen to be sitting in seats where a lot of important decisions are made, and no matter how you cut it or say it, it is still this council's municipal development plan adopted by this council for the benefit of our residents. The issue for me is one councillor's suggestion that we get rid of all council pictures is no more valid than my suggestion that we change out a couple of pictures to have this be this current council. If we go back to the argument that this original municipal development plan, uniquely Stony Plain, came about in 2013, it appears to me that that would have that council's pictures, and the current council that's featured throughout this document would not have any pictures, and that's not right either. I believe that we do need to have some updates, and I would still like for some of those pictures to be changed out. I'm not going to tell you what pictures to put in it. I'm simply suggesting what pictures should possibly be changed. And for sure, on page 126, I believe, if we go to page 126, that is the one where it's where we have a full council picture. I'm not on the right page.
That's page 124.
No, wait just a minute.
It's page 124.
I'm looking at the one where the town building is there, right?
Page 124.
124, because that is this council. But I'm not saying go back and change all of history, like pulling down all the statues in the United States of America. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking to make this our plan, which it is. And we wouldn't even have a council picture of the previous council if you guys had not changed some pictures somewhere along the line to reflect that it was this previous council to this one that made these last changes. So I would like that to be considered valid and not just us make it for consideration by administration. That is no less a valid ask than one councilor saying, take all council pictures out, which sort of suggests that it's about ego. It isn't about ego. It's about who's responsible for me. The other thing that I do like some of these other suggestions that came out of council this evening, and I do appreciate the answers from administration in explaining things, particularly around that land ownership being respected and the big concern that I had that people were going to be trapped and not be able to ever have their land be considered for development when they no longer wish to farm. Overall, I think the revamp of this, the second good look at this plan to make sure it's fresh is a really good idea, and I love to see this come forward periodically. And just as an aside, and I hope I make some of you laugh over this, if we didn't change out any of these pictures, Councilor, then Mayor Choi would still look like a young boy instead of the 56-year-old man he will be come the next municipal development plan go over. So I think he's certainly gotten a lot of gray hair from being on council, and he ought to be respected for that. So it doesn't hurt to change some pictures. The last one I wanted to mention, Mr. Mayor, is I looked at the big picture that's on the page for our vision. That's page 100. I looked at that and I thought, no wonder this always catches my attention. The whole addition on the RV park on the north end of Main Street, the first-class RV park, by the way. There's a few other things that are missing, but that big picture says a lot about Stony Plain. I certainly would like that to maybe be looked at, how you could change out that one page to reflect some of the great development, particularly along 16A, that has happened and shown the hard work of the previous councils, as well as last council and this council, toward creating those industrial and commercial development dollars that help offset tax rates for our residential taxpayers. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thanks for your comments, Councilor Hansard. And then we're comments, questions, and debate. And then Councilor Meyer, go ahead.
Would you please just clarify, when we vote on this for second reading, where does that take us and what remains to be done?
So if council passes second reading, then through the Edmonton Metro Region Board, administration has to send out a request for evaluation to the EMRB, which then they'll have to make sure they review it and make sure that we have added the points of the regional agriculture master plan into our master plan. And then if they do see that, which should be easily done, it's highlighted in red, and then they will say, okay, then we just come back for third reading after that. But in terms of the comments about changing the photos, and I think mentioned a couple times, I think we'll leave that up to staff. I think I'm not too concerned about photos being changed or not. In terms of, there's mention about a development that was a thorn in our sides, and yes, it was, but it's also someone's home today. So I don't want to belittle or change that away because it was bad. And in terms of the other photos of the community that received awards, or in terms of events that were done with community members, just to change them out, maybe okay in a full review, but I do share the same concerns as Councillor Hanser said, because we adopted it in 2024. There is only one picture of the actual old council in there, which has nothing to do with the whole NDP. And if I'm hearing what Councillor Hanser is saying, that should be our stamp. So that stamp of council should be the current council. Okay, yeah. Thank you. You're done. Councillor Kletchko, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if administration can clarify for our public that are listening what role the EMRB plays in part of this municipal development plan and how they help to frame the region.
Through your worship to Councillor Pletchko, the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, or MRB for short, is a regional governance structure set forth by the Alberta government to ensure that all municipalities in the Edmonton area have an alignment in terms of a growth plan or a vision in terms of our success. I guess at the highest level, it's really making sure that there's alignment in terms of Edmonton and its surrounding areas growing consistently in the same direction. As that body, all municipal development plans do need to go through the MRB for approval. So ultimately, we need to make sure that our municipal development plan matches to the growth plan that the MRB sets forth. So us as a member, we contribute to that, and then we have to make sure that our own municipal documents are in alignment with that regional body.
Your Worship, too, if I could maybe just make a quick comment. Our manager of planning indicated it, I think, right off the bat in his comments there. But the Edmonton Metro Region Board, as well as a similar board in Calgary, are statutory, created by the Government of Alberta. And as such, through the regulation, there's certain aspects of the EMRB, and this is one where we must comply. It's not a perhaps or a maybe. There's some room in how that happens, but it is a mandatory compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question, and thank you for providing that question, because it answers a lot of questions our residents may have. So appreciate that. Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Choi. I thought you forgot about me over here. All on my own little island. And I know why you don't want to. I know why you don't want to change the pictures, because just like Councillor Hanser said, you'd look all older.
I look younger, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a great move. It's a good move. Don't change the pictures. I look great in that picture. But seriously, just a comment on this. It's broadly speaking, like what are we trying to do? We're trying to ensure prime ag land for future generations. And so, listening to you tonight, Mayor, it's not even necessarily the first time we've made an attempt. It's good to see that we're putting this in policy, and I think it strikes a good first step in something that, kind of interestingly, Stony Plain being an agricultural community for its entire existence, that nobody ever thought to put this in a hard policy in such a manner. So I don't think the EMRB should have a problem passing this, and I think it leaves us flexibility to work with developers. And on that regard, I just wanted to say, having listened to you, Mayor, and administration this evening, I did share some of Councillor Hansard's concerns about landowners' rights and ability to work with that, but I can see how the window is still open there, and it's not really being shut. So like I say, back to how I started, we're trying to keep future ag lands for future generations, and I think we're doing that tonight, so in favor of this.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Any more questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I have a question for administration. So in terms of timelines, if council gives us a second reading and a submission gets sent in, when do we expect a response back from the EMRB?
Through your worship to all of council, the regional evaluation framework has about a 9-week turnaround time. This allows, and I forget if it's the 4-week review and then a 5-week appeal, or a 5-week review and a 4-week appeal, but it's 9 weeks in total is the period of time. So with council's blessing today to give this second reading and go through that process, within several weeks here, we'll make an application and then wait the 9 weeks. Ultimately, for third reading, if everything goes as according and expected, we'd expect this back probably on October 15th is probably when we would expect this, if I had to give an estimated date right now.
Okay. Thank you. And is the administration also factoring the fact that the EMRB has a couple weeks off in the summertime as well?
Through your worship, all of council, my understanding is that 9 weeks is supposed to ensure that if they do have, vacations and whatnot within their staff, they're still able to meet that mandate. I know they've got different consultants, so they have some flexibility in terms of ensuring they can meet that 9-week window.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any more questions for clear understanding? Okay, seeing none, the motion is on the screen, so nothing has changed, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Right, moving on with the agenda is number 9, which is business items, which is the strategic and corporate plan Q2 update. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. For your consideration this evening, beginning on page 186 of the agenda package, is the quarterly report for Q2 to align and update the progress of the strategic plan and corporate plan strategic initiatives. As you're aware, the strategic plan was presented and approved by Council on March 11th of this year. So this report provides the progress and status update that rolls forward into Q2 of this year and provides status updates on initiatives and key actions that are supporting the implementation of the strategic plan, as well as those key initiatives as part of the corporate plan as well. Those are my comments, Your Worship. We'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have with regards to the report.
Okay, thank you. Members of council, you had the opportunity to read those highlights. Definitely, as we can all see, that there is progress in moving the community forward. So any questions for clear and understanding, and maybe just a question of where we're at in certain projects? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to administration, to the first page of the report there, strengthening our unique partnerships required. I'm just curious if administration has anything they can add to our developing relationships with the new French school. I know when they first moved in, we changed some stop signs and whatnot and gave them a great grand opening and warm welcome and all of that. I'm just curious if we have anything else on our radar there.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you through to Councillor Meyer and all of council. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything specifically that we're interacting on, but I do know that we have had conversations, certainly through them and with Parkland County, as we look to the future for that land that they currently reside on to be transitioning to the town from Parkland School Division in the next couple of years. We will certainly have more direct conversations with them as they will be residing on town-owned property. And I know that we've worked with them on a transition plan for that, but I'll perhaps turn it over to the town manager to speak to other specific items that may be reflective of that.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through to the rest of council. I think the only other thing I would add to that, now that the school is here and it's operating, I have heard a few more, positive and just general interaction in the community. Over the course of the first little bit, it's exciting. Here it is. It's being constructed and moved in and so on. And, I mean, my sense is that now they're, he's settling into as a regular part of the community. So we've received some questions, looking for garbage cans over here, or, how are the intersections functioning? So just to sum that up, after the initial phase, so to speak, they're becoming more of a a partner in the full functionality of the community, which brings positives and brings questions about, just operations and so on. And, from what I understand, when we do work with them on some of those functional things, the relationship is good, solid, back and forth.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. And just in terms of a question to administration, how are we coming along with the phase one of the rec center? I believe we should be pretty close to closing the tender, so just provide a quick update.
Your Worship, certainly, yes, last week, Monday, Tuesday, I guess it would have been, the pre-qualification tenders closed. We received 12 submissions. So the architect is going through those submissions to ensure that all aspects of the pre-qualification requirements were met. Meeting with them tomorrow, and we should be, in the next 2 weeks, we would be assigning 6, shortlisting to 6 to go to the next phase, which would be actually bidding on the job itself.
Well, that's very positive to have to receive 12 submissions. That's that bodes well. Okay. Any other questions from members of council? Okay. See none. So again, thank you, administration, for putting this forward. I think this allows us as a council and also us as a community to track the process of the work that council has been doing through our strategic planning over the years. Like I said, it's not all going to be completed in one calendar year, but we can see the progress and we can see where we're going as a community. So well done. Councillor Hansard for the motion, please.
Your Worship, I move that Town Council accept the strategic plan and corporate plan Quarter 2, 2024 update for information.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Any debate on the motion to accept for information? Call the question. All those in favor? Okay. That is carried. So moving on with the agenda is number 10 is council discussion. So this is the time that members of council can bring up questions or highlight certain committee events or activities that are happening in the community for members of council and to our public as well. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for me this evening.
Okay. Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to represent Stony Plain on what I'll call almost a world stage down at Calgary this past weekend. Many people go down there for Stampede. We were fortunate enough to go down to some business meetings with the many MLAs, the premiers, and a number of people. We had a great opportunity to get face-to-face with a lot of them, and a great opportunity to discuss Stony Plain and the future of Stony Plain. And we were able to, how do I say it? We're able to get some meetings, hopefully, with some of the important people in our community coming up over the next year. So we kind of look forward to all that. And I just wanted to say thank you to yourself, Councillor Hansard, as well as to Parkland County and Spruce Grove representing everybody. I think we did a great job for our tri-region and got to know a lot of people down there. So thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to highlight that. Councillor Hansard?
Your Worship, I'll just start off with the obvious. I don't walk as fast as you, but you put me in a room with people, and I'll out-talk any one of you any day of the week. So I still maintain one of the highlights of that event. Over and over, people would say on the C train or wherever, "Are you here for Stampede?" And I'd say, "We're not here for Stampede. We're here to meet important people who came to Stampede." And one fellow said, totally out of the blue, doesn't know us, didn't even have a town badge on, and he said, "You must be in government." So I had to laugh at that. I will tell you, I took the briefing notes that we were given, so thank you to our general manager, Brenda Otto, for preparing that. I think you're the one that prepared that. Is that correct? Oh, good. Because I took those, and I think I did honor to you. And Councillor Palechko and I worked like, well, we were just a well-oiled machine. And if there was somebody in the room that even breathed any kind of importance, we were on them. And we used your briefing notes, and I don't know what possessed me, but I used it over and over again because I kept getting the most positive reactions. And I talked with a lot of people from the NDP. And I would say, we just met, if they had a silver badge on or something that said Legislative Assembly, I'm going to talk to them. Because they still vote. And they still have the right, if they're not forced to vote in a block, they still have the right to support Stony Plain, remember Stony Plain, and be our support. And if the day ever comes that they form government, we create some kind of relationship there that we are not the enemy. And so what I did was simply say, my name is Councillor Pat Hansard. Harold would say who he was. I said, we came here to meet you. And they all looked somewhat surprised by that. And we were able to hone in on them and tell them our 3 points. We need our hospital upgraded. We're trying to build the first recreation facility in over 50 years in Stony Plain. And we need help and money from government because we're serving three big regions, or one big region, 3 different municipalities, and it can help a lot of people. And then I would talk about the one other item, I can't remember what it is now, I said it so often. But the point was, they were all very receptive. I have since on the way home, I received messages from 3 of those MPs, not MPs, MLAs, telling me that they would like to come to Stony Plain for a visit. So we'll get them connected with the right people should they follow through on that. And it was a privilege to be there. There's a couple of events that are worth every penny it costs to be there. And one of them is the big rooftop experience because it just put us right in the midst of so many important people. And Councillor Palechko and I actually managed to get a few minutes with the Premier, and that was very valuable. So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the trust that you believe we can go there and represent the town well and get our issues put in front of people who might make a difference for us. So thank you.
Good. Thank you for the summarization, Councillor Hansard. Councillor Meyer?
Again, we're missing Councillor Anderson and his gratitude, so I am grateful that you guys had to go to Calgary with the water. Is the water issue still a thing?
No.
Oh, okay, well, I'm grateful you guys still had to go to Calgary and I didn't. So with that, and the great weather. But other than that, I have nothing.
Thanks, Councillor Meyer. And I think if you look at the makeup of council chambers tonight, I think it looks like you're the one that forgot to shower. You're way over there by yourself. Nobody wants to sit beside you. Just kidding. Those that know us, we like to have a little bit of fun, and a little bit of teasing is always good. Did you steal Councillor Anderson's fan? All right. Just for me, again, just definitely highlight the importance of making sure that we take the time to lobby and advocate for our community. A lot of things that happen in our community don't happen by accident or in a short period of time. As mentioned by Councillor Palechko and Councillor Hansard, we had those, a lot of those chance meetings with MLAs, MPs, and ministers to advocate for Stony Plain and what we need as a community to continue to grow. You know, the province has the Alberta's Calling campaign going, and we are getting a lot of new immigration and also net migration from within the other provinces as well. So we want to be partners with the provincial governments so that when individuals do come to our communities, we're ready for them in terms of housing, services, and they'll be able to support them and their families when they're here. It's always good to have a calling card, But if you can't support those residents that are coming in, then we need to turn off the taps. And I think that's one of the biggest advocacy roles that we're doing, is make sure that we are wanting to collaborate and partner with the provincial government to make sure that we have the ability to house the people that are coming here and provide those services for those residents that need those support services. And you know what, a fun fact, that when I wasn't busy in the evenings after all the networking, definitely I don't sleep a lot, because I will say that you can sleep when you're dead. So I rode the train, the blue train and the red train. The red train from tip to tip takes 45 minutes. The blue train from tip to tip takes 43 minutes. So, which is actually very, very interesting. And I was looking at the transit system there. They do have the C lines, which then gets majority of the people in the high corridors. They also have their large buses, which takes care of all the collector roads. And then they also have the smaller buses that we currently have now as kind of like the on-demand, the small sub-regional or subdivisions, and they pick them up and then bring them into the larger transit center. So which again, system that we don't have as a municipality, but good to understand, because maybe at one point we may be 1 million people. We'll probably be long gone, Councillor Hansard? Maybe, but maybe we will still be here. But it is good to have the kind of that thought and knowledge and then look at it. So just a fun fact for you, if you're in Calgary and you ride the C train, the red one takes 45 minutes from tip to tip, and the blue one takes 43 minutes from tip to tip. Just a random thought. With that, we are done. So thank you, administration, for providing the agenda package and members of council, especially Councillor Hansard and Councillor Plechko. Definitely, as we're networking and doing this, we'll also have to read the agenda packages and make sure that we're ready for council meetings. So again, that's a lot of time shuffling, taking a half an hour here, an hour there, and sometimes reading on the train, going back and forth. But we did it, and definitely appreciate the work that you've done to advocate and push our community forward. Yes, and before I call it, we do have a great event that's happening in our community. We have the citizenship ceremony that's happening tomorrow. It hasn't happened in a few years because a lot of the ceremonies were done online, but we are having one tomorrow, so just check on our website, and definitely like to see everybody come down and welcome our newest Canadian citizens to our community. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.